In this video, I would like to go through some of the settings options and the settings menu for the Saltcorn application. Uh, I'm just going to go through the different options we have here. I'll talk a little bit about each option, each tab, and we can just quickly get an overview of what some of the different configuration options are, and then you can read a bit more on the wiki or explore on your own. There, under the settings menu, there are 6 different pages, and each page has a number of tabs that has different settings under them that are related to each other. The first settings page is called About Application. It is a series of global options that affect the application as a whole and has some settings for the identity of the application and for the branding and some of the names of the application. So on the first tab is the site identity, and this is where you set your name and your logos and various other things. This page contains a form where you get a number of settings that you can change according to how you want your application to look. So the first, for example, the first option here is the name of the application, and this is the name that appears up here. So I can, if I change this to, let's say I change this to my app, and then when I've changed something, I do need to press the save button down here, and then you can see that the name of the application and the sort of the title in the menu has changed to my app. You can change your time zone, which is set in has some effects on various plugins and various time inputs. And then you can select 2 images. Now, these need to be images that you have uploaded under the files setting. That we'll get to that in a second. But I think we saw in the last video how you can upload some files, and then you can choose these here. So there are 2 files here. One is the site logo, and this appears next to the name of the application in the menu, and it's used in a couple of other places on the login page. So for instance, I would not recommend this, but if I choose this image, then this is the one that will appear next to my the name of my application. The fave icon is this little icon that appears in the tab in your browser. That is should be recognizable at a very small size, and so you can upload one of those to the file section over here, and then you can use it here. Custom CSS and custom HTML are 2 settings boxes, and anything you type in here will appear on every page in the application. So if you want to change something in the look and the feel, and if you know cascading style sheets, you can enter some of the CSS here. Or if you, for instance, the custom HTML, you can use that to enable some something like Google Analytics or Plausible or some other kind of analytics module. If you want to enable that, then you can enter the tag here, and it will go on every web page. And then there are 2 settings here that are mainly of interest to developers. Gives you a little bit more power, but also allows you to make a few more mistakes that can crash your application. But sometimes you need that. If you're running a Saltcorn on your own, it sometimes is helpful to print out all the SQL statements down here. Right, so the next tab here is backup. So here you can take a backup, or you can restore a backup. This is simply download a file or upload a file. So if I just press backup here, I get downloaded here in my browser, and I can save it, and it's a zip archive, and this will now appear in my downloads folder, and I can restore it. I can do another upload if I want to here. I would recommend restoring backups from the first page. I think we saw when you create a new application, there's an option to restore a backup when you create the first user, and I would recommend doing that rather than creating users first and then restoring. But sometimes you might want to do it from here. There's some email settings, and if you can enter SMTP host, various settings related to the email. This is used. You can send email with actions, and then you can also use email if people have forgotten their passwords. They want to get a password reset email or something like that. There's various places where you can use email. On the wiki, there is a page about how to use Gmail as an SMTP server. That, you know, if you have a very low volume of email, but it's up to, I think it's up to several hundred per day, you can use Google's SMTP server for free. If you need to go out and buy one, I found that Postmark is by far the most reliable out of the ones that I've tried, but you can try any other service that will give you an SMTP address and then a username and password, and they'll tell you what the configuration parameters are. Under system, you have some options here. So sometimes you need to restart the server. This is the case if you've updated Saltcorn, then you need to restart it, or sometimes you can use it to update some plugins or something like that. Clear all is danger zone. Be careful here. This is where you can delete everything in one go. So if you really want to reset your whole application, including the users, all of your pages, files, etc., then you can do it through here. And this will get rid of everything. If you do delete the users, then you go back to the first screen where you create a new application. So I'm not going to press that now. And here you have some facts about the system. Just, you know, what versions are we using, database, what node version, what Saltcorn version are we running. So there's a little bit of diagnostics here. Okay, the plugins we saw already. This is where you can install plugins. Let's do one for fun. So there are some packs and there are some plugins here. Packs and plugins operate a little bit differently. Plugins extend Saltcorn with new functionality that you could not create yourself using no code. This will be new views, new data types, themes, things like that, new ways to visualize data, new interaction patterns. And so, for instance, we can, let's just try. This is a plugin that gives you a nice way to enter time and dates. So you just hit the install button, and there you go. Now it's installed. You can see the ones that are installed over here. Some of them have configurations. So let's look at one. I know the Stripe one has configurations. For instance, the Stripe plugin, which allows you to bill your users for access, does require an API key from Stripe. So you need to enter that here. Now, of course, I haven't entered the right one, so it's not going to work. But if I had entered the right one there, then I could go ahead and build some billing system. Now, if you have installed something that has a configuration, you'll see this little cog. So see, here's two different cases. So you see the little cog here. We saw that with the plugin as well, the theme that we installed last time, any Bootstrap theme. So you can go back and change that those settings with the little cog here. Every plugin that you have installed also has a little information button here, and that has some information about what is supplied by the plugin. So you can see that the Stripe plugin supplies some view templates, and there's also a link to the repository, and if there's any documentation, then you can see it here. Packs work a little bit differently from themes. So packs do not give you new functionality you could not build yourself with no code, point and click. Packs rather give you a bundle of functionality that you could have built on your own by building views, tables, pages, and the pack will essentially get you started. It will save you a bunch of work to enable some functionality that can quickly get you started. So they're essentially whole applications. They don't bring data, but they bring the structure of an application. So if you want a blog, then you just hit install here on blog, and then you will get the tables, views, and pages that go with a blog. All right, so this is a great way to explore Saltcorn. So if you're just exploring, I would recommend install a couple of packs, play around, then go back, do your reset here, clear all, install another pack, etc. And when you clear all, you can leave the users, you can leave that unchecked, and then you can go and explore another pack. And that way you can see how, with the built-in functionality, we've used tables, views, pages in different ways, and how applications are built. Okay, themes are actually a special case of plugins, but we just put them here on a separate tab here so you can see the available themes. The users and security settings page contains a list of the users, the ability to change these users, to add new users, as well as settings related to roles, users, security, and authentication. On the first tab here, there is a list of the users. For every user, you can go in and edit that user. There are various settings here. You can set a new password, disable the user temporarily, or delete the user. You can also create new users here, where you can either, you enter the email address. So if I want to create a new user here, I can either set a random password or enter a new password here. So if I set a random password, I will be told here what that password is up here. Every user will belong to a role. We talked about that in the previous video. So the list of roles you can see here, you can add a new role. You can change various settings about the roles. Let's say I want to add a user that is not quite staff, but it's maybe a pro user, maybe a user that has paid for access rather than somebody who has signed up for free. So let's add this. So I have to add the ID of that user role, and so this is a number that determines the amount of privileges. So the lower this number, the more privileges the user will have. So in this case, I want something who's in between user and staff. So the 7 that was suggested was fine. Let's call this pro user. So here you go. Now I've got my new user here. If I have multiple themes installed, I can set a different theme for every user. And here I can, I might want a different theme for the admin user, and then a public-facing theme here. So this role here, 10, it's not a role that can be really assigned to users, but it is the role that a visitor to the site has when they have not logged in and not created an account. And so again, you can set the theme for these public users, and you can also choose this as in various places. When you have to choose the minimum access that is required, you can set that to public. We also have two-factor authentication, so you can mark any role as having two-factor authentication optional, disabled, or mandatory. In optional, users are able to enable it. The way that looks is in their user settings here, they can enable two-factor authentication here, but can make it disabled, so they won't be able to enable it, or you can make it mandatory, which means that they are prompted to create a two-factor setup when they create an account and every time they log in, if they have not already done so. And you can delete user roles as well. Under settings, under the settings tab of users and security, there are various settings related to users and security. So some of these are tick boxes. You can stop people from creating new accounts. So you just want to, in that case, disable this. Again, every change you make, you should press the save button at the bottom of the form. A lot of these other settings are views of the user table that you can use to change how the security system, how the sign-in system and authentication system works. If you're learning just now, it may not make a lot of sense because we haven't discussed tables and views. So I think it makes more sense to come back to this at a later point in time. But this is where you change how the login form works. how the sign up works, and if there are some forms that you want to direct the user to after they have signed up. It's also possible to set up verification of the accounts with email, and to do that, again, you need to create a view of the user table and then select it here, and then optionally, when users have been verified, you can elevate them to a higher role, like we saw before, the pro user role. Some role related settings, so what are the privileges you need in order to upload files or to generate API keys. Some settings here for cookies, so what is the duration of cookies, and how is the remember option affecting that duration of cookies. And then finally here, there's some custom HTTP headers. Be very careful when you're using this. It is possible to really mess up your system, but these should be sort of HTTP headers. So they will look like, some of them will have an X in front of them, X method. So they will look something like this. I'm just making some stuff up here. This is not the place where you put HTML or CSS tags. And if you do, then this is possible here to really mess up your system, so you can't log in again. So maybe before you do this, do take a backup so you can restore. And every time you make some of these changes, remember to press the save button, otherwise those changes will not be remembered. Moving on to the site structure settings page, there are a number of settings here that you can use to influence how the navigation hierarchy of the site works, and other settings related to the site structure, the languages, and this is also, you don't see it here because this is running on saltcorn.com, but if you have a self-hosted instance, then this is where you set the tenants. You see the list of tenants, and you see the you change some settings for the tenants. But the first thing here, probably the most relevant here, is the menu editor, and this is really important, and it can be a little bit difficult to use. So let's say we want to create a menu for one of our pages. We've only really gone through pages, so I will only cover pages here. Let's say we had these pages that we've created before, so let's now go ahead and create some menu items for those. So I'd like to create a menu item for a page, and then I select that that's the type that I would like to edit, and now I can set a label for the menu item, and then I can choose an icon, so I can associate an icon with that. Let's just do this. Let's do something else. Yeah, we'll do this ambulance truck. You can set a role so that this menu item will not be shown to people who have a role below certain levels. So you can create menu items that are only for logged in users. You can create menu items that are only for administrators here. And then here you have, since we've chosen that this is a page menu item, you have to choose which page you're linking to. And you can also create button links, but that's a little bit more unusual. Usually you just want to leave it to link here. And there's also some options here for some themes have an option for putting it at the bottom of a mobile menu. So once you've filled in all this, you press add, and then it comes up here. And now if I want to edit that, I have to press the edit button here. There's actually a shortcut to doing this, so you don't have to do this. If you go to the list of pages, all you have to do is add to menu. There you go. And now, when we go back to the menu editor, we have it dropped in here. You can do things like, you can have submenus. Let's try it. So first of all, you can swap them. You can swap the order. You can make it a submenu. There we go. You can do that, or you can also just use these little buttons here. And so to see what this really looks like, you don't have to press any save button, but all you have to do is refresh your page, And now you can see we have a submenu here. Okay. And now if I don't want that to be a submenu anymore, then I can here come back. And now I've got my 2 items again. So if I want to edit, again here, if I want to change the title, and maybe I want to edit icon. Let's pick an icon. There we go. And then you press the update button. There are other types that we haven't covered here. We obviously haven't covered views yet, but if you do have a view, then you do exactly the same thing. You can make a, let's do this. You can create a new menu item that's just a link to somewhere else. Like if I want to do a link to GitHub. Let's see, do we actually have the GitHub icon? Yes, we do. And again, add, and now to see it, I refresh the page, and opening this in a new tab gets me GitHub. I think that's about it here for the menu editor, or at least enough to get you started with exploring it on your own. The search is not really relevant yet because it searches content that is in your tables. So I think we'll leave that. It is, however, good to remember that there is a global search facility here. And so in fact, there's a built-in sort of how we have to configure search first. Once you've got tables, you've got some views, you nominate some views to be the search result views, and then when you search for something, you get to this page where you can see the results across all of those tables. There's a library here. This is, you may remember, as we were building the pages, there was a facility with a library. I'm not sure I showed you that, but there's a library here where you can add components. So let's go ahead and add this little text component here. Well, that'll do. And so now I have this library component. It means I can use this component anywhere else in my builder, so I can go to a different page or view or something like that, and I can use this facility to drag this in, sort of like here. So I get a duplication of that. So those components here will be listed in here. This is where you can delete them. That's essentially the only thing that this screen exists for, is deleting these library components. Languages, you can say what languages you are using, and then you can provide translations for those languages for content in your application. So if we say that we use English, and that has, you have to know the name of the locale, and then you can save that as the language. So you can list all the languages that we support in the application, and then you'll be able to provide translations of various different strings. Okay. All right, let's move on to files. This is a list of the files that have been uploaded to the system. The main things here, you can see the list of files. You can change the role that is required to access each file. And then you can upload new images here. So I can select a new image and upload it directly into here. That's pretty much it right now. There are also some settings for the storage. So by default, the storage is built into Saltcorn, and it's using the local storage facility, but you can change it to use Amazon S3 or an S3 compatible storage option, and then that will be used as the backend for your files that are stored. This screen will probably change slightly in the near future because there will be different options than Amazon S3. The last settings screen is for events and triggers. So events is quite a complex area. I think we will definitely get back to this in a later video and do a full treatment of that. I will just do a brief overview here. Events are things that happen in your system that are tied to certain types of occurrences. We can get a list of the ones that are, well, there's actually a list down here already of the types of occurrences. So you can create a trigger that responds to a certain event, and that event can be insertion, update, delete on a specific table. So I can create a trigger, an action that runs every time somebody inserts, updates, or deletes a row from a specific table. But then there's some other event types. So there are events that are called weekly, daily, hourly, and often. So those are based on a periodic schedule that just happen once a week, once a day, once an hour, and the often means typically every 5 minutes. So you can set an action that runs quite frequently or once a week if you have some sort of household cleaning tasks to do. There are events called the API call. So that means if you create that as a trigger, then you will be able to call that as an API calling into Saltcorn, and you can tie that to an action, as we'll see in a second. And then there's the never event type. So this never fires, except that it never fires on its own, but you can then tie a button to it if you like. So a button can also trigger events in this with these triggers that we'll show here. Then there are events related to the login system. So login failed, and so you might want to record that or somehow perform some sort of action when these occur. There's the generic error event. So that is when an internal error occurs in Saltcorn. So you may want to respond to that by sending an email or notifying somebody on a pager maybe, or something like that. User verified is again tied to the login system. That's when a user uses the verification system to verify their identity somehow, either against an email, or we have some plugins that can do this against SMS messages. And then startup is when the whole system comes online. Then this is triggered. You might want to use that to monitor how often that happens. Okay, so what can I do with these event types? So what you can do is tie an action to an event. And there are various actions that you can then tie to these events. So let's just see practically how that works. So I create a trigger, and then have to choose, let's say I want something to run insert when something is inserted on the user's table. Then I can run an event. And then I have to choose which action. So the blocks is the most powerful and relatively easy to use. It's a drag and drop interface where you can create code actions that might remind you of Scratch if you've ever used that. You can also just run some JavaScript code. You can do various actions on the tables, or you can send an email. You can contact an external web service, or you can also emit a different event. So let's create an action with the blocks that runs every hour, just to briefly see how this works. So the way you can let's see. So let's just print out some text. Oops. What I'm going to do is I'm going to print out hello world every hour. Okay, but I could do other things. This will just print it out on the server, not very useful for anyone. But I can also do an HTTP request. You actually need to assign that to a variable, to some URL, which you can type in here. There's quite a lot of flexibility in this system, and you can do a test run or you can change it in different ways. Right, I'll go into this in much more detail at a later point. I think we'll need to do a full video on the trigger system. You can create custom event types. So as you may remember, you could emit events. You can also do this in here. I think you can emit events. I forget where it is. Yeah, you can emit an event. So if you create a custom event, then that will appear in this list. And so you can then attach further triggers. So you can create triggers that trigger other triggers, and they can do this conditionally, because this can be inside an if loop, an if block. So you can do, quite complex logic using the system and create new trigger types, new event types that can trigger other events. So they can get very, very powerful and very, very messy if you're not careful. There is an event log that shows you when events have occurred. So before you record things to this event log, because we don't want to record every event, you have to select which events are recorded. So currently no events are recorded here, but if we want to record inserts to the users table, we can do that here. I save here, and now when a new user is created, it will appear here in the event log. That just about wraps up a quick overview of the options in the settings. And in the next video, I'm going to start describing tables, which is how you store your data, which underlies any kind of dynamic application.